I knew that I was adopted from probably the time I could speak. I grew up in Richardson, Texas. I had one older sister, and my mother, from my earliest memories, was always 100% in my camp. My father was probably more of a typical father of the 50s and the 60s. He's working or playing golf all the time. I was a skinny kid. I was not a great student. I was not great in sports and never felt in exactly the right place. And I struggled with that. My mother was very supportive. She did a lot of things and found programs. Turned out I was dyslexic. And so as they learned how to deal with that in school, things improved. It wasn't a matter of being stupid, as I learned later in life. It was a matter of not learning the same way that other kids learn. Photography really changed my life because I started getting good at it and learning that I could make money with it. I started photographing weddings and children's portraits. My mother had to drive me to the wedding. I didn't have a driver's license. It really kind of changed how I communicated and got along with adults. I got better at the photography, and by the time I was a senior in high school, I was making $20,000 a year. A lot of my self-worth came about because of photography and because of the success of photography. In late '79, I'd gotten a contract to write surety bonds that are written by insurance companies that guarantee construction projects. And by 1983, we formed Universal Surety of America. Universal Surety was growing and it had gotten so big that I was making more money than I ever thought we could make out of a company. But a guy named Sam Zell out of Chicago comes along and wants to buy the company. And he offered a price that was the highest price to book ever paid for a property and casualty insurance company. At that point, I had no choice but to sell it. As soon as my non-compete ran out, I started a new company. And over the next couple of decades, it was so fortunate. God gave me the ability to build that into something that was 10 times what I'd sold. After I sold Universal Surety in 1994, it was about the time that I really started getting more intentional about my search for my birth mother. The Colorado Department of Vital Statistics required that we get a court order to open my original birth certificate. So I thought, this is the key. I'm going to find my birth mother. We literally searched millions of records and we kept running into dead ends. And the guy that I'd hired to go do this and help me with it, I remember him so distinctly telling me, John, you're going to have to realize that we're probably never going to find her. But I met a young investigator named Pam Slayton, and she went back over all the records and she tracked down a home for unwed mothers in Denver, Colorado. And we found out through conversations that she had had that there was probably a little black book that had the real information. Pam was able to take the information we learned and trace it down to a family that was a perfect match to what Catholic Charities had told us this family looked like. Pam Slayton called me late that afternoon and she said, this is it and I have it all. I've got her phone number, I've got her address, we have your birth mother. I knew how I wanted to contact Irene. And so I sent her a letter. And 2 hours after she got it, my phone rang. The first thing she said is, I want you to know right off, I do not want to have a relationship with you. And I said, I'm fine with that. And we started talking. I had questions and she had answers, and she had questions and she wanted to know about my life. I wanted to know about hers. Once we started talking, we really liked each other and we really hit it off. I said, I want to meet you. So why don't we just skip all the stress and I'll fly out there tomorrow and let's have lunch the next day. And she said, okay, let's just do it. She wanted to meet somewhere way away from where she would run into anybody that she knew. I was a secret. Nobody had known. She was a buyer at Macy's department store, and she was doing things in the 50s that were unheard of in terms of a young girl going off by herself to Europe multiple times. She wasn't some youngster. She was 28 years old. She knew she had to go somewhere. This was the 50s. She figured out that Colorado had great secrecy laws, did it in secrecy of her family, in isolation, away from her exciting life, away from the things that she was doing, and had me. All those years, she thought that I was going to hate her. I was not going to like her. I was going to be mad at her. And that's not the feeling at all. It's the opposite. If she had had any idea what a great family I'm living with in Richardson, Texas, and the life that I'm having, my feeling was of joy and happiness and pleasure and thankfulness for the things that she had done for me. About a week after meeting Irene, I went to see my birth father. I went into his office, which was in the basement of a house in Baldwin, New York. And I said, I was born February 21st, 1955. He said, oh, really? I was married in 1954. I said, my birth mother was from Rockville Center, New York. He said, well, that's just right down the street. He said, do you think I could be your birth father? And I said, well, Bill, that's kind of where this story's going. And Bill just stands up and he starts crying. And he comes over and just gives me a big hug. Dear Irene, two of the greatest things that have happened in my life were the facts that I was born, generally taken for granted, and that I was adopted, something that I greatly appreciate. Some adoptees may have anger towards their original birth parents. However, I have only joy. I was raised by terrific parents and have a great family. The fall of 1954 and the spring of 1955 must have been very challenging for you. What must have been a very difficult time in your life was the greatest thing that could have ever happened to me. My name is John Knox, and I am that kid.